Today, we're here at Election Central, the UOG Cowboy Fieldhouse, with the final unofficial results for the primary election. Let's kick it off, Jason. So for the congressional race on the Democratic side, incumbent Madeleine Bordallo received over 8,000 votes ahead of Tony Babauta. She goes head-to-head with Felix Camacho, who came out on top for the Republican race on the congressional side. Ahead of Margaret Metcalf, Felix Camacho received over 4,600 votes ahead of Margaret Metcalf's over 3,000 votes.
Oh, Ken, the senatorial race was very contentious throughout the night. A lot of lead changes, but it finished, and these results, by the way, are pending certification from our friends at the Guam Election Commission. On the Democrat side, it was Senator Frank Uggan Jr. and Senator Michael St. Nicholas, both incumbents, and both tied for the lead with 9,381 votes. The third spot went to first-time candidate Therese Terlahi, followed by B.J. Cruz, Talena Nelson, Dennis Rodriguez Jr., Tom Atta, Joe St. Augustine, Narissa Underwood, and Tina Rose Munya-Barnes to round out the top 10. 11 through 15 are as such: Judy Wanpat, Regine Bisco-Lee, Roy Respicio, Fred Bordallo, and Jermaine Alerta. The two spots that, at least in theory, again pending certification, that will not advance to the November general are Vic Gaza and Armando Dominguez. As for the Republicans in the senatorial race, it was Frank Blas Jr. claiming the top spot with 5,315 votes. He was followed by Will Castro, who makes his second congressional run, and he's very, very strong at this point with 5,266 votes, followed by incumbents Tommy Morrison and Tony Atta. Luis Munya, the first-time candidate, in at number 5, followed by Jim Espaldon, Chris Duenas, Mary Torres, Eric Palacios, and Fernando Esteves to round out the top 10. 11 through 15 to the cutoff point go like this: Jose St. Augustine at 11, followed by Amanda Blas, incumbent Brant McCready, AJ Balahaja, and Ben Servino. The two cutoff candidates who will not advance, once again pending certification, are Barry Mead and Ellery Paz.
And we go on to the mayoral races. We should note that a lot of the candidates who won their races still have to go on to the general election due to a new law with the Guam Election Commission. We start off with the Ganya Heights incumbent Paul McDonald will proceed to the general election. He ultimately wins his race. In Agate, Democratic candidate Roy Gamboa, he'll go head-to-head with Kevin Sesuico. For the Agate mayoral race, they both ran unopposed in their villages. And
in the vice mayoral race of Agate, of course, the lone Democrat was Vicente Castro. He got 295 votes. For the Republicans, and Castro was a Democrat, for the Republicans, Christopher Farron triumphed. He had 408 votes, followed by Joseph Salas, Francisco Ngoko, and Juan Blas.
For the Asin Maina mayoral race, Frankie Salas came out as the top Democrat. He was the only one running in that race. But for the Republican side, Vicente St. Nicholas, he came out on top with 193 votes, ahead of incumbent Joanna Margaret Blas with 142 votes. So he'll go head-to-head with Frankie Salas in the general election. In Barrigada, June Blas, she won her race. She was uncontested.
Mm-hmm. And there was only one candidate, a Democrat, in the Barrigada vice mayoral race. That was Jesse Bautista, finishing with 791.
And then for Orta Chalampago, 3 people ran on the Democratic ticket. Jesse Gogui, the incumbent, he came out on top ahead of Adolfo Palacios and Edward Cruz. He'll go head-to-head with Willie Brennan in the general election. For Dedido, incumbent Melissa Tavares came out as the top Democrat ahead of Chuck Sanchez Jr. She'll go head-to-head with Steven Guerrero, came out as the top Republican ahead of Scott Duenas and Ernesto Aquino.
Well, of course, Dedido is the island's most populous village, and as such, it has a lot of candidates. The Democrats, there were 4 of them, but Bob Canata triumphed. He had better than 1,000 votes. He bested Pascual Artero, Dave Duenas, and Ed Senato. The lone Republican who advances to face Bob Canata was Frank Beneventi.
And in Hagåtña, John Cruz, the incumbent, finishes ahead of Jovi St. Augustine. No one is running on the Democratic side, so he'll ultimately win. And in Arahan, Democrat Doris Lujan comes out ahead of Jose Chargaloff. She'll go head-to-head with David Chargaloff Jr. in the general election. In Manila, Roque Alcantara is the lone Democrat running there. He'll go head-to-head with Alan Ungakta, who came out ahead of Bob Pelkey for the Republican race.
And for the vice mayor race in Manila, a foregone conclusion because Francisco Delgado, the lone Democrat, advances, as does Tomas Duenas, who represented the GOP.
And in Maritzo, Rosie Tanantongo and Ernest Chargaloff, they'll go head-to-head in the general election. They both ran unopposed for their parties. In Momontoto Maiti, on the Democratic side, Rudy Paco came out on top ahead of Tito Castro. He'll go head-to-head with John Teitzno for the Republican side, ahead of Victor Villagomez and Antonio Cruz. PD Mayor Dot Chargaloff, she will go head-to-head with Jesse Alec. They both won their races. In Santa Rita, Del Alvarez came out as the top vote getter. In Sinahania, Robert Hoffman ran unopposed. And I know for the vice mayoral race, Rudy Iriarte won his race as well. In Taufofu, Vicente Taidegui came out on top ahead of Wayne Ujoa. In Tamuning, both the mayor and vice mayor ran unopposed, Luis Rivera and Ken Santos. In Pneumatic, John Sanchez is the top vote getter there for the Democratic side. He'll go head-to-head with Johnny Canata. In Gigo, Peter Pasquale is the top Democrat. He'll go head-to-head with incumbent Rudy Matanani, who ran his race against Joseph Flores.
And for the vice mayor race of Gigo, once again, Catherine Martir, the lone Democrat, and she will advance, and she will face the Republican Anthony Sanchez in November.
And for Jonia, Jesse Bloss came out as the top Democrat ahead of 4 other candidates. He also beat out Frankie Heighton. He's the independent candidate. He will not proceed to the general election because he did not garner enough votes for their threshold. For Agate, the vice mayoral race, you mentioned that earlier. So those are all the mayoral candidates. And then for the public auditor race, incumbent Doris Flores Brooks, she came out top with over 14,000 votes. She's followed by Doreen Crisostomo with over 7,000 votes. Those top 2 vote getters will go on to the general elections. Zenaida Asuncion was number 3, but she will not proceed. Again, so these are all the results, the unofficial final results for Decision 2016. The GEC still has about 10 days to count some absentee ballots and provisional ballots. We'll have the full list of results on KUAM.com.